Solve for x in each of the following. Now, the first question here is a quadratic equation. A quadratic equation which is actually also a trinomial. Now, when we solve for trinomials, we create two brackets. Now, this bracket will help us solve for x in this particular question. The first thing that we'll do is we say that on this side you're going to have x, and this side you're also going to have x. And the reason why we have x on both sides here is because we understand that if we multiply x times x, it's going to give us x squared. We need to figure out what to be here and here. We do that by finding two values. Now, these two values, let's call that m and n. But now these two values, when you multiply these two values, it gives you this negative 12 that you have here. And when you add these same two values, it will give you the coefficient of x that you have here, which is positive 1. So thinking about that, we're looking at factors of 12. M and n would be positive 4 and negative 3. Because 4 times negative 3 gives you negative 12. And 4 plus negative 3 gives you positive 1. We're going to make this plus 4 and this negative 3. And to finally find our value for x, we're just going to say x plus 4 is equals to 0, or x minus 3 is equals to 0. So our answers would be negative 4 or x is equals to 3. So this is how you factorize. So this question here tells us to solve for x. We're trying to solve for the root of 2x plus 1 is equals to negative 1. The way we do this is by eliminating the square root. And a way to eliminate the square root is by squaring. So I would have 2x plus 1, square that. Now, when I have this here, this square can cancel out this square root, so that you're only left to 2x plus 1. So we kind of eliminated that square root that we had. But one important rule in maths is that whatever you do for the left, you have to do for the right? So that they're all balanced. So what I can do is I can actually also square this side too. So with that, I would have, simplifying this a little bit, so this is how far I can get with the simplification, but I notice I can also factorize this by bringing out a common factor. And therefore my answers would be, after getting your answers, you need to test it by substituting your answers into the question. Now, if the left hand side is equal to the right hand side, it is a correct answer. But if it is not equal, then that is not applicable and it doesn't work. So I'm going to substitute 0 into this. So I'm saying, now this here gives me 1, this here gives me negative 1. So for that reason, we say that 0 is not applicable. That's not an answer. X is not equals to 0. We could also substitute the 4 and see if that works. Yeah, so as you can see, they both give you 3 and 3. So it means that that works. So this is the only answer that you would get. That's it. So this question wants us to find the value for x. To answer this question, we need to use some laws of exponents. The first law of exponent you need to know is now you need to know these 3 laws of exponent. The first one is that whenever your bases are the same and there is an equals to sign, it means that the powers are also equal. So in this case here, a to the x and a to the 2 means x is equals to 2. Another law of exponent you need to know is the square root of a is the same thing as the a to the power of 1 over 2. And finally, another important law you also need to remember is a squared times a to the power of 3 is equals to a to the power of 5, meaning 2 plus 3. Now you need to put that at the back of your mind when answering this question. Now let's go back to the question. This question here asks us that 2 to the power of x root x is equals to 2 to the 27. Using the first law we wrote over here, we understand that this is the same thing as writing, yeah, because the bases are the same. Now using the second law, we also understand that this is the same as writing this. And finally, using the third law, we understand that this is the same thing as writing 1 plus 1 over 2, because there is a power of 1 here even though we do not put it, and which is equals to 27. Then this here can also just be written as x to the 3 over 2 is equals, changing 27 to exponents, it can actually be written like this. And since the question wants us to find x, we are trying to remove this 3 over 2 from this x over here. And how we do that is actually by multiplying the inverse. So what I'll do is that I'll multiply 2 over 3, because I understand that if I multiply 2 over 3 with 3 over 2, it's going to give me 1. So therefore, this here will just be x. But if I do multiply 2 over 3 on the left hand side, I need to also multiply that to the power here. For that reason, when you multiply this, you're going to get 3 to the 2. So therefore, your answer is just x equals to 9. And that's it. So for this question, we also need to find x. X squared minus 2x minus 8 is less than 0. To answer this, the first thing we do is factorize. Factorizing this equation is going to give you we factorize this equation to give you x plus 2 bracket x minus 4. Now, one thing you need to understand is that this question is less than 0, not equals to 0. So for that reason, we need to get critical values. Now, critical value is the answer you get if this was equals to 0, right? Instead of less than 0. So the critical value for this would be the next step is to draw a number line with these critical values. Since this is a quadratic equation, we can draw our parabola graph to denote that. Since our quadratic equation is less than 0, it means that y is also less than 0. Now looking at this graph over here, everything above this line, because this line is your x-axis, everything above this line is greater than 0, and everything below the line is less than 0. So if we shade the part of our graph that is less than 0, this is what it gives you. So now as you can see, we shaded from -2 down to 4, and that tells us our answer. So our answer for this would be -2 is less than x or 4. We could also write it as x is an element of -2 to 4. You have the choice to choose between these two options, but whichever you choose, it is absolutely right. And that's it.